Friends, colleagues, so we are currently starting the panel on the energy security in the times of crisis, and this is probably one of the most burning issues for Ukraine today. So we expect two more guests to join us shortly, but we are currently ready to start. So we have distinguished experts from all across the field, and this topic will definitely have a heated debate around here. So I'll start from right to left. So we'll have Ildar Gazizulin, who is one of the key energy expert in the Ildar. You rebranded your think tank actually. So you're now working as a key energy analyst at the We have the chairman of Naftogaz, Andriy Kobolyev. We also have Qimiao from World Bank, and we have Irina Paliashvili, upstream expert in upstream and one of the founders of Ukrainian legal group. So, and we expect the minister joining us shortly. And this conference, the topic of escaping the USSR legacy, is probably one of the most challenging for the energy sector, because the challenges we are having in this sector are largely coming from the models and problems shaped during Soviet times. And this section brings together researchers and policymakers, both internationally and domestically, who are having the long-term vision about how the sector should be evolved. So I want to thank you for Kyiv School of Economics and Vox Ukraine for bringing together this amazing community of forward-thinking people. And I probably Dr. George Logush, who put immense energy into making this possible. I will invite him to say a few welcome words for creating this jointly thinking environment about how to escape the legacy. Mr. Logush, would you love to?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Don't turn your heads too much, because I just wanted to thank first and foremost, thank you. Yuri Hornichenko and Timofey Milovanov, they are the people who created this concept. And then when we went to look for funding, the USAID said, yes, we'll fund, but we would like to see very much policymakers involved, so that academics talk to policymakers, and so that the hard research that's being done and the rigorous tools that are employed will result in effective policies. And so that's how this conference was born. And so we have, and I want to welcome and thank very much, we have the finest academics from all over the EU and North America here today. And we have the top policymakers, ministers here as well. And I think this is the beginning of a dialogue. You know, you exchange business cards, and then the emails begin to flow, and we hope that our ministers will always be ready to reach out and say, listen, we need some advice, and we hope that our academics will be bold to come forward and say, listen, you may be doing something not quite right, this is a better way to do it, and in that way, we can help Ukraine to resolve its triple challenge. And remember, war. We spoke about that on Friday evening. An economy that is in its fourth recession since independence, and reform, which desperately and drastically needs to be done finally, but in a way that's communicated to the population effectively. We don't want politicians on channels with high ratings talking about genocide, that reforms create genocide. Believe it or not, since many of you are not from Ukraine, this kind of nonsense goes on here, and that's not communicated reform. So we want effective reforms that are designed by policymakers with the help of professional economists, and we want those reforms communicated so people understand what to expect in the future. And thank you very much for doing this, and let this be the start of a dialogue. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Logush. So the majority of people in this panel are at the edge of energy sector transformation, but probably one of the toughest jobs in this sector is on the shoulders of the Andriy Kobolyev's team and Naftogaz, transforming the Naftogaz from like company focused on subsidies to the real energy company is the big deal. So Andriy, so we will start with the short statements, like 5 minutes for all the panelists, and then we will go actually to the discussion. Andriy, we are inviting you to share the progress, which may be now unseen for the world, but how Naftogaz is transforming itself, and what are your ambitions for that?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting to speak at this event. We actually have a small presentation. If it's possible to put it on, there is only one slide, which I think out of the whole set I would like to show. Can you please fast forward? Yes. Thank you. If we speak about USSR legacy, this probably is the only picture I would like to show. It demonstrates 3 promises. The first promise in 2008 by Timoshenko government to bring market level pricing for gas in 3 years. You see the promise, it's depicted in blue dotted line, and you see the yellow line, that's the result which effectively took place. So that was basically a lie. The second promise is Azarov government in 2.5 years to bring gas prices to market level. Same story. Now we have its new government, and this is so far. You see that the yellow line follows the blue line, and hopefully it should stay to the very end to reach the market level within 2 years. We can discuss a lot about diversification. We can talk a lot about how we should deal with Gazprom, whether we should go to Stockholm or not, how many interconnections we need, from what countries, at what prices we can bring gas. That's something where we have achieved certain results. I will show this slide just to prove that our team has some track record of success. It's 2013, 2014, and first quarter of 2015. The blue portion of the pie is the proportion of natural gas purchased from European Union. Why we are going back to this slide? We are convinced in Naftogaz, and we can prove this with all relevant data, that without bringing market pricing for gas, there will be no reform. Market pricing is key for this country to leave USSR legacy. Our politicians and our government should be brave enough not to lie to people about some virtual gas pricing, which can be used for some virtual separated Ukrainian gas and whatsoever. Gas is a commodity. It has a market price. In 2014, because of imports from EU, because of balancing different routes, we proved that there could be market pricing for gas in Ukraine, and now it is. If you look at Gazprom behavior, latest price decrease, it's no politics, it's simply business. They just want to preserve a share of Ukrainian market, and adjusting price is the only way. Now, when we have the market price for wholesale price of gas, everyone should understand that price paid by any consumer category should not be less than that. And for those consumers who cannot afford paying price, there is also a mechanism invented long time ago in other countries. You don't have to invent the wheel, you just have to copy operational model from other parts of the world. It's direct financial subsidy. As easy as that. Until it is done, you will have lots of politicians who enjoy or who apply populistic tools to convince people that they are good tsars who gives them free resources because $30 per TCM is actually close to free, which results in many, many inefficiencies. Firstly, as a country, we are inefficient in the amount of gas we consume. And most of that inefficiency comes from households. If you compare household consumption to other countries, it could be decreased at least twofold. Twofold decrease is 10 BCM. 10 BCM at current pricing is $2.5 billion US. $2.5 billion US could be spent by our country for something more appropriate and more efficient. In our particular case, that could be, for example, military expense, or that could be energy efficiency expense, or healthcare expense. We are wasting expensive resource. And I don't believe that we can leave USSR legacy without recognizing that there is objective reality, and that reality is market pricing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kobolyev. So the markets versus politics approach of Naftogaz has shown that marked increase in the volume of flexibility and the pathway towards some, not just energy security, but potentially someday energy leadership for Ukraine. Actually, we've been the country where all this gas infrastructure started someday. But I would also ask I want also to ask Mr. Qimiao about the World Bank's view. What are the further transitions Ukraine's need in this direction? What are the key fundamental changes we need to secure our energy supply and secure our future? What's missing on the agenda, and what are your key suggestions?
Thank you very much for the invitation to join this session. I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see this many people still sitting here in a beautiful late Sunday afternoon. Clearly, some of you are thinking far ahead and probably thinking that energy efficiency issue is not going to go away that soon. I see a very young lady sitting here learning about that subject as well. So it's very, very nice to see that. For full disclosure, let me say that I'm neither an academic nor a policymaker. I'm the World Bank's regional director for Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine, responsible for the World Bank's programs in all these three countries. I want to make 5 very brief points. The first is that because of the legacy you have, Ukraine actually has huge potential in terms of energy efficiency. Because today, Ukraine's energy intensity is about 3 times of the average of EU 28 countries, about 3.7 times of Germany. So clearly, there's huge potential there. The second point I want to make is that tariff increases, as Andriy just said, is absolutely essential, and it's the first necessary step to send the right signals. Here I wanted to say that I think the Ukrainian government recently has taken a courageous step to increase on average gas prices by about 450%. No one else in the world has done that, but this is absolutely necessary, and I think it's a very important first step. Clearly, when you do this, the authorities would need to put in place a targeted social assistance program to protect the poor and the vulnerable. These are the people who cannot afford to pay increased prices. The third point I want to make is that there are many measures the authorities can take to increase energy efficiency. The first one, I think, which Andriy is leading, is really about restructuring the gas sector itself, not just tariff increases, but improve the overall efficiency. Clearly, it's going to be difficult to increase efficiency if you don't have the right price signals. Again, that's why tariff increases are important. Second, there are a lot of short-term investments you can make. There are issues like consumption-based billing and building level metering and temperature control. Residential housing, some of the retrofitting, insulation of roofs and doors, particularly outside doors, these are important. And of course, one needs to make sure that you can provide financing for both the small and medium-sized enterprises to do some of this, as well as the households who don't have the income to support spending on energy efficiency. But there's also a huge agenda in terms of improving efficiency in both the production, transmission and distribution of gas and district heating, as well as electricity. So these are all important measures. Some of them require relatively small amount of investment in the short term, where others will require a huge amount of investment. And the fourth point I want to make, as George mentioned, is that communication is absolutely critical when you're trying to increase tariffs this much. And that's because that people need to understand why you need to increase tariffs. And if you don't, then you're going to be having those vested interests in society who are benefiting from the current low tariffs will come out and resist these reforms. So it's absolutely essential that the authorities have a communication strategy and a communication plan. You also asked me the question, and that's my last point, what is the World Bank doing in all of these? We're actually doing quite a bit. In fact, 47% of our current $3.5 billion investment in Ukraine is in the energy sector. That includes hydropower, power transmission, energy efficiency, and district heating. So we're trying to provide the financing to support energy efficiency. We're also providing advice to the authorities on policy, including tariff reforms and Naftogaz restructuring, as well as the regulation of the energy sector. And we're also providing advice and assistance on communications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fan. Thank you for focusing not just on the infrastructure component, but also on the soft infrastructure, on the minds of the consumers. And we are happy that Minister of Fuel Sector, Mr. Demchyshyn, is with us. And well, there is already a question to you, if you don't mind. Yeah, so you recently had to change the schedule of your visit to the States, where you were meeting some international policymakers, including U.S. Secretary of Energy, Mr. Moniz, and. Well, I was impressed by one of the statements from this visit, that one of your core priorities is the decreasing of influence of the energy monopolies on the sector. From our today's point of energy security for Ukraine during the times of crisis, what's your vision? What's your opinion about the influence of the monopolies as the agents of energy insecurity? And what's your more detailed strategy in this thing? How we secure ourselves from our neighbors and from the monopolies?
You see, you have raised in one question pretty much 5 or 6 questions, so I would need probably an entire day to answer all of those, but I will still try to focus on some of them. In reality, the meeting in Houston was the number of meetings were very positive. I had the opportunity to meet with top ranked managers at companies like EDF, like Eni, like Gaz de France, like and many more, apart from officials. And all of them are strangely very positive about Ukraine. They, most of Europeans, they know our infrastructure very well. They know that we have great potential, great reserves in all directions, in oil, in gas, in coal, uranium, which we extract also here in Ukraine and produce nuclear power. They know our capacities in terms of generation also very well. They highly regret that most of those assets are not for sale. And as soon as we start talking about privatization, they are saying, well, what is put up on sale? So why don't you talk about Energoatom, Ukrhydro, Ukrenergo, and many more interesting assets? Well, this is a story for probably longer future, or not for now. But all those people, they know a lot about Ukraine, and they have a great interest. And the war, actually no one was talking about the war. I was also surprised. They know that there is problem, but yes, they know a lot about the situation, and also Americans. Americans strangely know about Ukraine a lot. So it was positive. No, you see, I studied in America, so I have experience, saying that I'm from Ukraine. But this time it was totally different. Now about changing schedule. Actually, I wasn't changing it because most of the, you see, the Sera week is the entire week. But most interesting events I have captured, so it was not a big deal. Regarding independence, Ukrainian independence, you see, I think that it is fairly easy. We have reserves. We have to develop those. Why do we have to pay for expensive gas to somebody else? If we have reserves here, we can extract, we can produce working places, we can generate taxes, and more. We can build infrastructure, we can solve social issues, etc. 1 trillion of conventional reserves in terms of gas. Who knows how much of non-conventional? Why not to extract those? Certainly, there are several problems. Lack of capital, experience, lack of service companies. But as soon as you start thinking thoroughly, you understand that the key lack is investment climate. Because those things, they will come. As soon as there is availability of assets, then some of the majors will come, and then it will attract smaller players, and private equity is more active, ready for risk, and etc. But the key problem is the same: corruption, the same rule of law, corporate rights. The key problem was you don't have anything for sale. I'm saying, yeah, well, there are many private companies, and I can name those. And they said, well, there is a problem because some of those have acquired their licenses. It was a discussion about gas sector. And they said some of those acquired licenses not necessarily transparently. So if I acquire, I run a risk that something might change. If you now would arrange an auction, put up some specific licenses for sale, and I would acquire those, I would be sure no one will have, no one will contest my right. So why don't you do it? So a lot of things were, focused on this direction. So production is one thing. On the other side, certainly consumption. We talk a lot about inefficiencies, about losses on the way of generation, transmission, consumption, our boilers, isolation, many things, many works are done, but in order to fix those problems, we need capital and we need time. Capital is slowly coming. Talking to IFIs, various IFIs like IFC, EBRD, they are providing funding, but it takes time. Certainly, there are other problems like how you isolate large multi-family building. In terms of efficiency, it would be good to do it in one go, but how you do it legally? If each individual family is, doing something, it might not be that much efficient if you want to do it systematically. And then there are legal questions, ownership questions, funding. So, and many of those are currently being resolved and discussed and fixed. But unfortunately, everything takes time. And then, many people come and ask, why does it take so long? Because there are so many problems, guys. That's the simple explanation. Whenever you dig, you put your finger, there is plenty to fix, and unfortunately it takes time. What was else?
So, and we were speaking about monopolies and your intention to eradicate monopolies. From
Okay, monopolies. Yes, you see. Then the other thing, I always talking to various people say that the key problem is in heart, in our hearts, because in the West people are used to compete. Yes, they understand that monopoly does have a possibility to charge monopolistic margin. This is true. It is easier and blah blah. But anti-monopoly committee in those countries is working more efficiently. There are regulators that focus more actively on these issues, etc. See, here situation over time has been a bit different because, true, it was we were used in Soviet times to work in big companies or groups or that were guided by ministries. And then at some point, it was easy to discover for the businessman that if you have vertical integration, you are able to plan. You are able to estimate capex, improve efficiency, stop competing on various levels, and then, extract something from the earth, incurring local cost, and then sell to external off-takers like steel or agri or, and get the currency. But in order to do this, you need to have a huge company with various, integrating various value chains. And then over time, we got such big players like in energy, in metallurgy, in oil and gas as well. There are certainly also natural monopolies. But I'm not trying to discover anything new. The solution is very simple. We've seen, also in America, such cases, in Europe, companies are either very tightly monitored and margins at each level are determined. And I'm trying to be reasonable, I'm an investment banker, so benchmarking is a good methodology for discovering how much should each particular value chain earn in order to cover cost, to maintain assets, to even to earn reasonable return on capital. Why not? Everything is reasonable, but you just have to be reasonable. And benchmarking helps. I'm not benchmarking Ukrainian companies to European or to US. We can do it emerging market to emerging market as well. So I'm just trying to explain that the approach is reasonable. On the other side, the other side is saying, well, but the situation is different. We should be earning more. Well, you can earn more, but if the next value chain allows you, if I understand that electricity price currently is in Ukraine is higher than in Europe, what do we do? Well, we can administratively increase the price, but who will cover that? Population or industry? 75 and 25% proportion. Certainly, it is easier to put everything on industry, But well, how do we want to increase our GDP if and electricity is on average 10-12% in cost of every good. So, increasing it by 30-40% now in order to satisfy specific expectations, we are lowering margin by 3% on GDP. So, can we do it? Not. So nothing new. We are not inventing bicycle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Demchyshyn. We will be returning to this issue once again. So we have a minister with the heart of investment banker who's fighting double legacy, both Soviet legacy and oligopolistic legacy of this sector. But this is really great signal you are bringing that many companies are interested in purchasing energy assets in Ukraine and reducing the dependence of imported energy. So, but on the other hand, we have the cases of several large energy market players who declared the cancellation of their plans. So, investment security, it's actually the big issue for energy market, and it's actually a big issue for many international players. And from the legal perspective and from investment security perspective, I would like to ask Dr. Irina Palashvili, one of the founders of Ukrainian legal group with a great international expertise in this field, how do the energy investors can secure their assets in Ukraine, and what should be Ukraine's strategy to providing the most attractive pathway to streamline such investments into the energy sector?
Thank you very much. I think it's obvious that there is a direct correlation between energy independence and energy efficiency in Ukraine and investment security, investment regime. It's very fashionable now to say that your cheapest energy is the one that you don't consume. I would say that the best second option is the energy that you produce domestically. So domestic production, by all means, should become one of the key priorities of the new government. And it's not only cheap energy, but also it's very good for domestic economy. It creates so-called multiplier effect. That's how international oil companies love to call it. That's jobs, that's suppliers, that's energy service companies, etc. But to have this dream come true, you have to create attractive investment regime, and you have to offer options to international investors. And when Minister mentioned that he was surprised that in Houston the international oil companies had positive attitude towards Ukraine's potential, that's not surprising, because for 20 years they were positive about our potential. They know we have reserves. They know they can do very good business here. But unfortunately, their practical mood, as one of the investors put it at a conference, goes from negative to extreme depression. And I have been working in this sector for more than 20 years with major oil companies, big ones, independents, etc. And it always has been a mixed bag, more bad news than good news. But I would say that the last year it was probably only bad news in the upstream sector. On the background of big success in the gas market, the new law on gas market, gas sector, etc., distribution, there is a very desperate situation in the upstream sector. And the bad news that are coming from the investment communities when one company is leaving the market after another, and there are very few of those, or some of those who are here are suing the government for violation of investment climate and violation of legislation, etc. That's not how it should be. And the question is, why is it happening? Very often in Ukraine, as a lawyer, I hear it all the time, and I disagree with it, but the standard answer is we need a new law. When there is a problem, the answer is given, we need a new law. Well, good news for energy sector, for upstream. We don't need a new law. There is a law on production sharing agreements, which was adopted in mid-90s. It has been amended several times, positively amended, and at the demand of investors. Basically, the whole wish list of investors is reflected in this law. There are mechanisms, there are rights, etc. The law has been tested in practice. First of all, there were several PSA tenders, successful tenders. Also, there was an arbitration case in Stockholm of Venko investor against the state of Ukraine, which was ultimately settled. But this case tested this law, that this law is really bulletproof for investors. It protects the investor. So there is a legal mechanism. We don't need a new law for investment in the upstream sector. So the question is, why is it not happening? And the answer is lack of political will from the government. There is no political will. And this year, it's even worse than previous years. I can give you an example of Marathon, for example. They have been in this country twice. They came twice here. They started investing money, hiring people, etc. Both times, they left in desperation. But when they left for the second times, they told me, when you hear something positive, let us know. And this year, I was in touch with them, and they asked me, should we come back? And I said, absolutely not. There are no opportunities. The government is not offering PSA tenders. The licensing regime is in a desperate situation also. So, this positive potential was there, is there, and will be there 20 years from now. But what really the government is going to do to open up the sector for investment and to implement what is already existing, the production sharing agreements regime, not only in terms of tenders. There is a new mechanism of converting the existing licenses into production sharing agreements, which is very attractive for middle-sized companies. I thought I would never say anything positive about Yanukovych regime, but unfortunately I have to say that they offered this opportunity, and EDF, together with ANI, had the first project of converting the existing license into production sharing agreement. It was signed in October 2013. The first PSA of conversion was signed. So there is already practice. There are tests, but the government is not demonstrating any political will. And I would like also finally to mention big mess with regulators. And we are talking about escaping the Soviet legacy. The mess with regulators in the energy sector, in upstream sector, is the Soviet legacy. We have your ministry, we have Ministry of Ecology, we have Держгеонадра, now the National Energy Commission, 4 regulators that are usually not on speaking terms. So the investors are running around all these regulators and trying to figure out who decides what, with whom to negotiate what, and we are back at square one. So I would like to ask the same questions as investors are asking the government. Why don't you do it? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for raising so important questions. And well, I will transfer now the floor to Ildar Gazizulin, who's been covering the energy sector at ICPS and now doing the same at Ukrainian Institute for Public Policy, and probably one of the deepest experts about Ukrainian policy mechanism. And I will have for you a really tough question. The tough question is why? So we have
whose guilt is it, right?
Yeah, we have 8 institutions influencing energy policy with almost zero horizontal coordination among them. We have a huge uphill battle for a lot of critical laws and regulations in the energy field. And my key question would be, why Ukraine cannot formulate the integrated energy security policy? Why all these institutions cannot coordinate themselves and act jointly? What do we need to overcome this disintegration and have a single defense against the energy war which is waged against us? Thank you, Ildar.
Well, thank you for this tough question. It's an honor to be in this panel. Well, a simple question to your answer. Well, what do you do with the inefficient bureaucracy? You either make it efficient or you make it small, or both. Well, I'd say Ukraine needs both. Well, I'll have one comment and two messages in my speech. The first comment is about the state of energy security, since this panel is about energy security. Well, I'd say indeed the results are mixed. On the one hand, we have some positive developments in the gas sector. Indeed, I mean, we see diversification of supplies. On the other hand, we see not so positive developments in the coal sector and electricity sector, where the dependence actually increases, dependence from imports, I mean. But I'd like to talk more about two notions that I think were alien for the Soviet legacy, but that need to be in place in the current modern market economy. The first one is about the trade-offs between various policy goals. I mean, we know that there's not just one goal of energy security, but there's a mix of goals always. And it's important to realize that when we achieve one goal, there is always a danger that it's done at the expense of other goals. And we know it happened in Ukraine. Pursuing energy affordability, we neglected the goals of energy security and of the goal of greening the energy, making it more green. And I think now there's a danger that putting more focus on energy security, we now may have issues with affordability and, again, greening the energy. And Mr. Qimiao mentioned the problem or risk of energy poverty, which is quite real. So indeed, I mean, the policymakers should always be aware that, well, there are trade-offs, and these have to be taken into account. Another notion that was not, I think, present in the Soviet times, but should be present now, and unfortunately it's been again neglected in Ukraine, is the idea of engaging stakeholders, and by stakeholders I mean consumers, producers, international community, which is quite important now in Ukraine. And in order to engage these stakeholders in a meaningful way, I mean, one needs to have specific targets, specific policy documents. Specifically, if you talk about the international community, I mean, European Union, IFIs, I mean, they need strategies, they need action plans to engage, to help, to provide assistance, technical, financial. And unfortunately, what we see now, there is an impression, maybe I'm wrong, is that the government just responds to crisis without any, at least some short-term planning. So what I would like to see is that the plans that I'm sure that are out there, that they are made available, that they are communicated to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders can actually provide their feedback. Because again, given the multiple number of policy goals, multiple number of stakeholders, if there's no plan of engagement and coordination, then I'm afraid we'll have a hard time harmonizing and streamlining all those priorities that Ministry was talking about, that indeed there are so many things to do, so that's why it's crucial to have those priorities and to have the meaningful consultation process and engagement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ildar. And I think there is one issue that can be raised and directed towards all of our panelists. So Ildar just mentioned the stakeholders, and we need this new evolution of the consumer. Consumers need being for decades they've been told the socialistic myths about energy. Don't worry, we'll get this sorted for you. Don't worry, the big boss or big mama will take care of all the energy challenges. And now they are cold showered. And that's actually the right price signal. But the big question is still, we have the leaky energy system, the terribly leaky and inefficient energy consumption models. Why the energy security in form of energy efficiency is so low on today's government agenda? Why the government is putting it so low on its priorities, and we don't have policies towards, so we have this approach currently successful as decreasing the energy as imported gas dependence, but we still have very limited success with that on demand side, because the government for over a year, Yatsenyuk's government, has no major incentives for energy efficiency on the consumer side. And how are you planning to overcome that? How Ukraine can do this fast, or for example, over this summer period? Because we won't be probably have another great warm winter like we had this year, and which probably saved a bit of fuel this winter. Who would like to? Yep. Please, Minister.
I will probably start on this, and I don't agree with you. I think that at this point of time there are already several initiatives that are being implemented. Substitution of gas by other like wood, coal, other hard energy resources is being done, and there is ruling of the regulator, energy regulator, which fixes the tariff for those institutions that have been consuming gas and switched to other energy resources. They are able to keep the same tariff. It is working for at least 5-6 months, and I think thousands of customers have already used this ruling. So they are working ahead in this direction. Regarding the saving of gas, I mean, Andriy knows the figures better than I do, but as I recall, population is consuming now at least 15% less. And you will tell me that this is because of the weather, and I won't agree, not necessarily. Like I said, many, I mean, you know from just general understanding that many people have changed their boilers, heaters, have invested in upgrading the buildings, and there is specific authority called energy efficiency, headed by Mr. Savchuk. He's very active. Mr. Zubko is also the vice minister, prime minister is also very active in this direction. There are, I mean, Oshad is providing loans to those that who are ready to buy new equipment, more energy efficient. I'm talking about, again, boilers and various heaters, etc. So it is done. EBRD provided $300 million in loans to district heat companies, to 10 district heat companies.
That's a World Bank, not EBRD.
Oh, okay, World Bank. Okay.
They have it too.
No, but they also have similar programs. So you
have 383 million.
Yes, you see. So loans are flowing into the sectors which. Certainly, with district heat, it might take longer than before this heating season, but work is being done, and it will realize. I think in 2 years, we will. I mean, not this heating season, but next heating season, we definitely will see fruits of these initiatives, because it unfortunately takes time. But even next heating season, I'm sure consumption will be different, because. It is already different.
Excuse me, Minister, but I have to disagree with you. And saying that replacing the energy source is energy efficiency, well, I wouldn't agree on that. It's for me, it means like if I'm overspending in hryvnias, like, and I have a leaky wallet, and then I start overspending in dollars, or vice versa, because currently you have less than 10,000 of recipients of this wooden boilers program for residential, and there is no addressing the families.
10,000 families, right?
Yes, 10,000 families, but we have over 40 million inhabitants, and we have zero program addressing the energy efficiency in multi-flat residential buildings.
But these multi-flat residential buildings, they also can, I mean, how many people have stopped using hot water and switched to boilers?
I don't think I can install the wood boiler in my apartment.
You can use electricity, right?
Well, Mr. Yatsenyuk was actively promoting electricity heating just a year ago, and half a year ago, I think you have a
55,000.
Yeah.
55,000 of electricity-powered boilers were installed.
Okay, and what's your vision about...
This is again probably not that much, but 55,000 families have switched from gas into electricity, which is already... And again, the regulator is supporting this trend. The electricity tariff is subsidized. Is
night tariff?
They are using night tariff, and it is dramatically lower than the average tariff, which means that during this summer, new people will also switch to electricity. I all know, certainly in this process there are other problems like capability of power lines, and but this is currently being done. Local energy distributors, they are following this trend.
Am I getting it right that energy efficiency means the reduction of netto consumption of the energy source in BTUs, not in different sources?
Kilocalories, right?
In gigacalories.
Sure. Yes.
So,
but if you're installing new equipment which is 30-40% more efficient, you are already following the trend. If you are changing your bulbs, into energy efficient ones, you are already saving. It comes, you see, you need to start from small step, but in the mass, if everybody will switch to other ways of lighting their families, it will also bring a result.
Thank you, Minister. And if possible, I would like to ask Mr. Kobolyev, the Agency for Efficient Use of Energy Resources is claiming that over 4 billion cubic meters reduction in gas consumption is the result of energy efficiency measures that's being undertaken. From your perspective and statistics you have at hand at Naftogaz, is it more a result of the policies, effective policies, or the war in the East and cutting off the industry there? What's your view on that?
Firstly, at Naftogaz website, you can monitor gas consumption by region and by consumer category. And we are trying to compare apples with apples, so we are not comparing situation at Donetsk and Lugansk, not Crimea, but yes, there is a decline in consumption. It's driven, of course, partly by the war, that's for sure. There are many industrial companies who are now consuming less gas because they can't produce. There is decrease connected with overall negative trend in the world economy. For example, companies producing iron ore who use gas can't sell at the price they used to have a year ago. That's why I just simply decreasing production, therefore they're decreasing gas consumption. So there are multiple factors to it. But if you look at the structure of energy consumption in Ukraine, you will notice that industrial consumers have done a tremendous job to cut gas consumption for the last 5 years because they were paying market price and it was feasible for them to switch from gas to coal, for example. we used to advise before Naftogaz, Metinvest, for example, who was switching to powder coal injection technology, and they cut gas consumption dramatically. A lot of other companies did the same, and now I remember how dependent these consumers were, for example, in 2008, and now for some industrials who are located close to the military action area, when we contact them and we are warning them that potentially there could be disruption of gas supply, and they are telling us, we don't care, we have options. We can use coal, we can use electricity. They did a lot of job. But that is not the case with household consumption, either direct consumption or consumption through central heating enterprises. And again, it's not because I love this topic so much, but many other fuels or more efficient equipment that you could use, or your behavior, for example, of consumption, will not be changed if you pay the total price with all the tariffs and VAT and blah, 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 $50 per 1,000 cubic meters. You simply, if you live in a private house, why would you regulate temperature? In most cases, actually, it doesn't make sense financially to replace your heating equipment with the one which will adjust for external temperature because it's so cheap. Yeah. You just don't care, simply. I'm one of the examples. I have a private house. I don't care. Why? It's $50. Oh, yeah, that's I'm open. Why should I care if it costs me more to go to the basement to regulate my boiler, because time-wise it's more efficient not to touch it. When the price will be different, it's going to be different for everyone. And in Naftogaz, we believe that out of total consumption, 5 BCM can be changed through behavior of consumption. People will not simply heat their houses to 25 degrees Celsius at winter time. And if you look at other countries, at rich European countries, it's not the case there. It's something that people here don't want to hear and don't like to listen to. If you pay market price for energy, you will be much more savvy. You will not apply old things. You will not treat energy as a cheap resource which you can use the way it used to be 20 years ago. Again, the same with if you look at central heating. Why most batteries in Ukraine don't have regulators? Yeah. You just open the window. It's the Ukrainian way. How are you going to change it over a year? It's quite difficult. But speaking of what is being done also, just to add to Minister answer, is that in Naftogaz, understanding the problems, we are now designing to change our business model to go to retail. And by moving to retail sales, we would like to add additional value to our residential consumers, and that value can be added through assistance and energy efficiency. By helping people save energy, by helping them install more modern equipment, that potentially is a big market, and that's something where we can play. That's something where we can use funds often offered by World Bank, for example, by EBRD, by IFC. The problem with the funds offered has two aspects. Firstly, it's quite difficult to monetize energy saving at current pricing. You have to return the money. And to return the money, there should be a source. First problem. Second problem, we need to improve our legislation. If you have a multi-story building with many apartments, you have to find a legal way for these people to be responsible for the overall bill of this particular house. And then you can move to a very simple thing. As an example, just which is done in Kyiv, for example, when you put meter on every house. Economically, it's not feasible to put meter on every apartment, especially if it's old building. You will need to have 5-6 meters per apartment because the pipes go through each level directly, crossing many apartments. So you need to put meter on the whole house. So people need to agree how the bill is paid, how the bill is distributed. When you put the meter, you can put a weather-dependent regulation system, which can, from our statistics that we've seen, in Kyiv, in particular, can decrease total bill for that particular building 3 times. And decrease of bill also means that there will be decreased consumption. So if you work with direct consumers. Now there is a way. If there are apartment buildings, the legislation needs to be changed, because existing legislation which governs this in Russian it's Ukrainian OSBB, it's not efficient at the moment.
Condominium. So but then there is also a challenge with the regulators and meters, that then there is a Kyiv Energo engineer coming and maxing out the output just to have the revenue flowing into the company. So, and we actually coming here to a very interesting point. The energy security challenges for Ukraine, are they mostly external or internal? Are they coming from our Soviet legacy and Gazprom and war in East, or are they coming from disengaged consumers and consumers not understanding the involvement into this thing? Mr. Qimiao, Ildar, would you like to comment on that? What's the key challenge now? How you see it? Where's the biggest problem?
I think it's a very complex issue, but to a large extent it is a legacy issue. It's not my role to defend the government, but let me just say two things, I think, which are quite important for energy efficiency, which they recently did. And the first one is actually getting rid of the middleman for gas trade between Gazprom and Naftogaz. That's a huge step. It get rid of a lot of the corruption in there, and hopefully will help to reduce the cost of gas to the consumers, both industrial and households. Second, I want to re-emphasize, I think, and Andriy is absolutely right, if you don't have the right kind of price signals, it's very difficult to incentivize people to improve energy efficiency. And again, I think that the tariff increase, both for gas and district heating, the government has recently undertaken, are critically important steps for energy efficiency. Are these enough? Clearly not. Can more be done? Absolutely. What more can they do? I think Andriy already touched upon some of these. First, I think it's about installing building level heat substations with temperature control. Obviously, you can't at this moment go back, spend billions of dollars, which you don't have, to retrofit every apartment. So building level substations can be done. How much is it going to cost? Our estimates is that probably going to cost up to $2 billion, and frankly, you can do that in a period of 2 to 3 years. That's number one. Two, insulating roofs and basements, replacing windows, outside doors in residential buildings. Again, this can help you to save, on average, 20 to 25% energy consumption. But that's something that you cannot do overnight. In most countries, this has taken anywhere between 7 to 10 years. And in the case of Ukraine, our estimate is that will probably require, in that 20-year period, about $20 billion. But the savings, again, can be quite substantial. For both of this first and second measure, I do think you need some changes in the law. Not new laws, but you do need some changes to allow, for example, the condominium associations or housing associations to be able to borrow, for example, right, as a legal entity to install some of these things. And the third one, which actually doesn't cost you a lot of money to do, is actually consumption-based billing. You need to have universal consumption-based billing across the board for all energies. And the other thing you can do, which doesn't cost you much, is improving the building code and energy standards for new buildings. Again, this will provide incentives. The last thing, which is actually about reducing the losses in both the production, distribution, and transmission of energy networks. Here, it's not just about the electricity transmission network, which also, it's very, very old. Most of you probably are not aware that almost close to 70% of your transmission lines are close to or exceeding 40 years of useful lifetime. What that means is that that system could potentially collapse any time you have a shock to it. And a lot of the issues also with your district heating, both production and transmission. we actually had a urban infrastructure project invested in helping to improve the water and heating water production. On average, these companies have been the smallest energy consumption reduction is 15%, and the best one is about 30%. Overall, on average, they reduced energy consumption by about 20%. Clearly, you can do the same thing with district heating. In fact, our estimates are that for district heating, again, the minimum savings you can have by investing in some of the simple investment that's needed would be at least 15%. So I think there's a huge potential there, and more can be done and should be done.
Thank you very much. Ildar, in your opinion, what threats are bigger, internal or external?
It's obviously internal threats, but I'd say it's, again, also opportunities, right? What's important is indeed dealing with monopolies, and to deal with monopolies, you need two institutions, basically. It's the Anti-Monopoly Committee and the national regulator. I think a lot, when we talk about energy independence, energy security depends on these two institutions. And these two institutions need to be strong, and strong institutions are usually comprised of strong individuals, strong personalities. And by strong, I mean qualified, well-paid, and with a clear mandate. Unfortunately, I think there are significant, what's the word, gaps when we talk about these two crucial institutions for the energy sector. Unfortunately, I don't think they can work efficiently in the way they are comprised now, to put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. While preparing,
that's why threats are still there, I'd say.
Yeah. While preparing this panel, I just checked the Anti-Monopoly Committee website, and they have small fish there. They don't have any big cases against big company monopolizing the energy sector, and actually it seems to be that there is a fan club of monopolies. I mean, like Mr. Demchyshyn, Minister.
Fan club is across my ministry.
Yeah. I think some companies created your fan club, and they just do love you. In your view, so I was starting with this thing, how much a threat are monopolies, and what's your roadmap towards decreasing the influence?
You know, I will tell you, there is no threat against monopolies. The prices will need to go 20-30% up, and that's it. And if we would have raised tariffs by 30%, we would have been the best professionals and beloved people.
Well, still, some of these companies, they do have really good professionals, and they do try to depress some of the other coal mining regions and influence the government and create some fancy named plans and invite some protesters to the street. How you are dealing with that?
Well, I'm just trying to explain my position. I'm trying to explain the reasons, goals, what I'm fighting for, and that's it. You see, for some reason you have not reacted. You see, people usually perceive a minister as somebody who is not taking care of prices. He's thinking about development of the industry. My direct goal would be to get more money into the mines, more money into generation, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can do it with just, running around asking for subsidies, asking for higher tariffs, etc. This is, one side. On the other side, I'm trying to analyze, for example, coal mines, and I understand that what I can do to fix the problem with salaries, for example, I can either get money from outside or try to increase production and lower the cost. So there are two sides, and a margin can move from both sides, right? And my decision was on the other, not on the tariff side, but on the cost side. But for the cost, you need more time, more effort, and somebody gets suspended or changed where in administrative level, where I see some inefficiencies. and some people are also being, laid off. So that's the difficult part. But this way, I'm trying to provide some buffer or keep for other ministries, for other industries, which will be able to get cheaper source of energy. That's my strategy.
Thank you. Dr. Poliashvili, at the beginning I loved your phrase about that the greenest energy is the one you need not produce. And Mr. Fan just mentioned that Ukraine needs a lot of capital for producing this not produced energy, for retrofitting the buildings. So you were focusing on the upstream mostly, but we also need billions of dollars for transformation of industry and housing sector. Can the investors into ESCO models, into energy efficiency, feel safe in Ukraine? If not, what they need to do? What Ukraine needs to do to ensure they are safe, if they're not just drilling for the unconventional gas, but they are going into residential sector and trying to protect our buildings from heat leaks and from feeding Gazprom?
Thank you. Again, this is a question of general investment regime, of legal regime, of friendliness of the government towards investors. I can give you an example of renewables. And, there were so many scandals in the renewable sector. Why? Because the government monopolized, one of the oligarchy groups, monopolized the renewable sector and closed down the sector for everybody else. So it was, again, violation of competition policy, of common sense, of investment regime, etc. So it's the same recipe for everybody, for upstream sector, for energy efficiency, for renewables, and for any investment, basically. Make it transparent, make it easy, make it simple, and make it attractive. And then, when investors are coming and spending money here and showing results, protect them, make sure that they are not at one point after they came in and put the money in, all of a sudden the sector shuts down and now they have to bring, to buy 90% of their equipment at the local market, which is impossible, or, any other absurd requirements. So it's the same recipe for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Renewable sector actually is a pain point, and it's a lot of disappointment for many investors who were on the. Probably you have a comment.
Yeah. No, I would love to comment on this, because you see a lot of attention is attracted to this question, but this is just 1.5% of electricity generated, and but at the same time, more than 4% of cash that is generated by energy market is consumed by this sector. So this proportion is obvious, and you are right. Historically, there was a problem. Now, at this time, there is already a new law with new changes ready for filing to the parliament, and I think that most of the issues reflected in the law, in the previous version of the electricity law in part of renewables, will be fixed. At this point of time, it has been very expensive. We pay on average 4 hryvnia. I mean, I'm calculating, putting together solar, wind, bio, small hydro, everything. So average tariff for all of them is close to 4 hryvnias. At the same time, nuclear is 40 cents, and thermal power is 40 kopeika, and thermal is 85 kopeika or something like that. So you can compare. A lot of money has been invested, this is true, but at this point of time, this is very difficult, expensive, and in reality, also technologically complicated area, because you see, electricity is consumed real time, generated and consumed real time. So wind You either get wind or not, and then solar, same situation. And our power lines, which has been already mentioned, are not ready for that. Therefore, a lot of investment needs to be done. And due to the law that you see, that you mentioned also, for power lines, I mean, the new investors in renewable sector were not responsible for power lines. They were not they shouldn't have improved the power lines at all. I mean, it was zero cost to them. I mean, theoretically, I know that some of them have paid for connection to the power grid. But that's another issue. So I'm just saying that sector is complicated.
But actually, can we afford staying in the Stone Age of energy sector?
Why Stone Age? Why do you think that nuclear is Stone Age?
No, I'm thinking that for some reasons many countries are investing into renewables, and they had the feed-in tariff pretty high on the beginning of that. And you have the comment, right? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say also, that I gave an example of renewables. It's maybe not a great example, but it's example of monopolization of the sector. And the high cost that you mentioned through the renewables is the result of this monopolization, because the government offered the highest green tariffs probably in the world, and of course we can only guess where those tariffs went. So that's something that is just a separate example, and I don't think we should remain in the Stone Age. Of course, renewables is something that will not go away, but it needs to be reasonably regulated, that's all. But, upstream in oil and gas, and not even, shale gas or some of these unconventionals, but even conventional oil and gas in Ukraine can be produced at a very good cost. And the government needs to invest nothing. The companies, the investors, ask nothing from the government. All they're asking, let us come, invest the money, and produce and sell. So the government only has to open the door. That's easy. No-brainer.
But the door is opened. I mean, nobody is keeping him away. And the key problem was tax, subsoil tax.
Not only.
One of the major things that has been, threatening. 55% per 1,000 cubic meters was a lot, but we are, in the process of renegotiating this tax with Ministry of Finance. I think that shortly, and Natalie Yaresko has already declared some of the progress in this direction. So I expect changes in this.
Okay, I think we keep our discussion limited for quite a long time, and we can now have the pleasure of accepting the questions from the audience. Bogdan, are you ready with microphone? Okay, so please raise your hands for those who are asking questions, and when asking, identify yourself and just name the person you are addressing your question to. Okay, so we are ready to take your questions. We will take some 10 minutes from coffee break. Probably, but we started later. Okay. Oh.
You see, we did
okay. Yeah, we have a question over there. Mm-hmm.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Benny Thurman. I'm not an energy expert indeed. I just came across the last days traveling across Ukraine an Austrian producer of biogas who was quite very excited about the possibilities that Ukraine is offering, and obviously biogas is something supposed to be pretty cool as a renewable energy. You dispose of a large agricultural sector who is producing by design a lot of biomass. What are kind of the chances? This seems to me like if it was put down to the municipality level, you could quite quickly get flourishing alternative energy sources across Ukraine, helping to remedy the situation. Thanks. So what is kind of done to encourage these kind of investments?
I think this is a question to me, right? Then I think that the decentralization is very good direction, but the energy market is unified. So I don't really see how you can fix the tariffs on the local level for the generation, for generators, so that they will be able to sell it into the energorynok, so to the grid, right? So this tariff needs to be either fixed on the national level by the regulator and then they sell into the grid, or they can generate wherever they want and sell to local off-takers, you know, being as a small piece in vertically integrated production or something like that. So, and biogas is a very interesting area. Tariff was, I think, 13-14 euro cent or something like that, close to it. I don't think it is probably 30-40% overvalued compared to technology used, cost that will be incurred, etc. But in reality, biogas production was not that big problem for the market. I think as soon, you see, the key problem was tariff. As soon as the tariff will be reasonable and close to the market level, there will be no problem with any type of limitation from the side of regulator or ministry or whoever. As long as they are charging very high price for production of their kilowatts, they have right to sell 100% of energy generated to the market, and any bulk that is used in their company is being sourced from the market. So can you imagine, you are not even using the energy generated for own purposes, which is not right. And they are paid by 100% from the market. So any kilowatt will be definitely paid from the market, which is not the case with thermal power or nuclear or hydro or others. So they were historically in preferred position, and this is the key problem. If they will be made equal, if the positions will be equal with other generators, which also need capital, also use imported sources of energy, etc., etc. So if the rights will be equal, I think no one will be putting pressure on this generator.
Thank you, Minister.
I would like to add a small point about biogas in particular. In Naftogaz, we are currently developing standard to allow biogas producers to enter the gas transmission system, so that they will have second option not to generate electricity, but also to send gas through the pipeline and just get revenue from selling gas directly. I haven't seen the latest report yet. That was started about half a year ago. There is investigation, but preliminary data shows that due to high quality of gas in Ukrainian gas system, it's quite dry. Probably the standard will be very, allowing and requiring not much cost to clean the final product to enter the system, since the proportion of biogas will be still small, but due to high quality of the other volume of gas in the system, it can withstand less quality biogas. So that will also be some assistance to people who are producing it. I hope the standard will be approved, will be developed by us, and will be approved by the ministry in the next couple of months.
The biogas to grid project from Naftogaz was actually one of my favorite innovations in the energy field recently, so thank you for it. So we have another question there, please.
Andriy, I'm addressing my question first of all to Mr. Demchyshyn, and I'd like to describe a few challenges and you tell how you're going to handle them. And in politics, perception really matters, and social perception is that tariffs are raised for a population at one hand as a way to teach us something, to be responsible, and people sometimes are reluctant to take such a didactic means, that the money we pay will go in the pockets of corrupt officials. And another thing is very important thing that my colleague, a behavioral and economist, will probably prove that when people believe that their neighbor will not pay and there will be nothing with him, he can just not pay. I won't pay. Yes. So challenge of people not willing to pay the tariffs, challenge of people not believing they get quality gas, or the money they pay goes in the pockets of corrupt officials. How do you guys plan to tackle that?
Thank you. I see. First, I focus on the tariff itself. You see, let's look at electricity. Electricity tariff is comprised of tariff for nuclear, which from nuclear, hydro, thermal power, these three cover about 80-something% of the entire volume of electricity produced. Nuclear, by 50% of the cost of nuclear power is nuclear fuel cells. And fuel cells, nuclear fuel cells, are imported. So we pay dollars. They are priced in dollars. You know, a dollar increased from 8, 10, 12, regardless, to 20. So you need to reflect that. Tariff for nuclear electricity increased from 32 kopeka to 42. So 10 kopeka, which is not sufficient now. This is not sufficient to cover all cost increases that Energoatom incurred. But it is already, this is one of the key factors. Thermal power. You see the situation with coal. I mean, anthracite is lost in the area. We needed to import. Now we are fixing the problem. Coal miners want to increase their salaries, etc. A lot of problems. But the tariff for thermal power has not increased. In fourth quarter of 2014, it was close to 80 kopeka. And for first quarter 2015, it is also on the same level. So we were able to go through this 6 months at stable level, at constant level, and this is the key problem. So tariff increased because we didn't have any chance to manage it, because nuclear fuel cells are not produced locally. Everything else has been kept at maximum to control the cost, but in the total market, I mean, in the sum, in the end, we needed to generate sufficient cash to pay for the same nuclear, for hydro, and et cetera, et cetera. There was no other way. Therefore, this price increase is, is the only way to balance.
Minister Demchyshyn, I would like, if possible, to talk.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much, and we will be taking.
And the problem with collection, it is a big problem. This is true. However, I believe that Obelergos selling the electricity to population and to industry, they have instruments how to manage collection.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are taking now our last question for this panel, and we are okay. Please, could you give the microphone to the gentleman over there? And dear panelists, if you have like some closing remark, like 3 points for energy security, I will ask you for very brief, like 30 seconds, to sum up your idea. Please, your question.
Okay, thank you for the chance for asking the question. My name is Alexander Shubukov, and I would like to ask first the representatives of the government of Ukraine is like continuation of the previous question. I think most of the people in this room...
Could you be really just sharp with your question?
Okay,
yeah, sure.
First question to the Mr. Minister about have you considered launching a public informational program to explain wide population, the public about the changes are being made? I think people here understand.
Okay, clear. The next one.
And the next one to Mr. Qimiao Farm. about you have mentioned 10 projects being run by the World Bank. What is the current status of the projects, and what is the total amount of investments to be made? And second brief question, you mentioned about 10 billion estimation for the individual heating substations for the country needs. Are you going to launch a program for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
So on the information policy, well, I probably will need to agree that the information policy, and there was not sufficient information coming from our side on the tariffs, but regulator was providing comments on various occasions. I'm having every weekly briefings, and in the briefing there are representatives from various media, so I answer any questions. I never leave the room.
The question was about like awareness raising campaign, not just communications.
But that's also very important. Naftogaz is also working on its level. So 3 institutions were providing information to the market. Well, I don't know how to make it more efficient. Should it be more massive? Should it be more massive in other channels of communication? Probably. But you see, I mean, explanation is very simple. Cost went up, and state doesn't have a possibility to subsidize. That's it. And before, electricity, for example, has been subsidized by industry. Industry tariff is higher than in Europe, so there is no possibility to transfer, to cover it by industry, to make up for low tariff for population. In gas, situation was totally different. Okay. State was paying the difference.
Thank you. The question was about more like information aspect, and probably the closing question to you about the.
The question is what kind of investment the World Bank is making in the energy sector. As I mentioned earlier, we have 5 ongoing projects in the energy sector, 2 to improve the power transmission system, 1 in hydropower to improve the capacity of the existing hydropower stations, and a project to improve district heating energy efficiency project. This was approved by our board in May last year. Unfortunately, implementation has been very, very slow. This is a $382 million project. I think more can be done to speed up implementation of that project. And we also have a $200 million energy efficiency credit line through Ukra Exim Bank. Are we going to launch a new program for building level investment in energy efficiency? At this moment, we don't have one yet, but we can do if there's a request. But obviously, our overall support to the country is limited, so some prioritization will need to be made and trade-offs will need to be made between this and other investments. Let me just make 3 very brief points. You talked about what can be done. I think 1, there needs to be continued tariff reforms. It is absolutely essential to get the price signals right. 2, I think restructuring of the gas sector will need to continue, and there's already very good steps been taken. And 3, I think a lot more can be done in terms of investing in energy efficiency in the areas I talked about earlier. Thank you.
Okay, I'm giving you a really strong signal from Timothy that we need to wrap up. If somebody would like to give some closing remark, just indicate it. If not, we're done. Okay, Ildar, really short, please.
One quick comment. One of the things I was taught in Kyiv School of Economics is that the cost of externalities need to be accounted for in the final price of the product. And we know that all conventional energy in Ukraine has huge externalities that need to be priced in. That's
okay. Thank you.
Comment. Thank you.
Anybody else? A closing remark?
Small comments that yes, we understand that there is definitely lack of communication campaign going on around. We have been as Naftogaz a bit limited in what we were allowed to say. Now we will be saying this wider, and we have engaged also private companies to help us pay for campaign, because I'd say from Naftogaz perspective we can't pay for everything, because this is probably the issue of the whole gas industry, not just only Naftogaz. And thirdly, I also would like to mention that it's very important that people who are gathered in the room who will be commenting gas issues in the future try to do it in a professional manner, relying, for example, on figures which are now available on our site as well, which explain a lot, we believe, but not on emotions. Because the problem we face is this issue is highly politicized, it's made very emotional, and that is why it's very easy to try to attack even general economic principles which are now used in this model. Yes, we will increase the campaign. We'll try to bring awareness to more people, but also we need assistance from expert society to be objective in what they're saying and how they comment the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more comments? Minister, you're done? Okay. Thank you to all the panelists, and I will ask our participants to give a big round of applause to all these people battling in the house. Thank you, and now we can enjoy a break and private discussions. Thank you.